All right, guys, our next guest needs very little introduction, but you know him as one of the best analysts in the sport with some of the best breakdowns on his channel, Full Reptile, a former UFC title challenger, and of course, the head of fighter operations in PFL Europe, the one and only Dan Hardy is in the house to give us a preview of the massive card this coming weekend. Dan Hardy, man, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. I know how crazy these last couple of weeks have been for you, man.
Hey, no worries, guys. I always try and find time to talk to you. As long as I'm awake, I'll give you my time. I got off the flight a few hours ago, so after this conversation, I'm gonna crash for a couple of hours, I think.
Dude, what a rock star! Well, now we appreciate even more you feeding us in. I can't believe it. You must be exhausted, wanting to sleep. All right, just before we talk about the big card, let's just catch up this past weekend, man. Congratulations on PFL European Championships this past weekend in Dublin. Another big one. What an event, man. Some massive performances from like Brett Johns, Dakota Dacheva, Khurshid Kakarov, Nathan Kelly, whole bunch of others. I'm curious, man, what were some of the standout performances for you?
You know, it was a whirlwind of a night, to be honest. There were so many good fights on the card. Like as we were approaching fight night, I was thinking to myself, like, we've got like 5 or 6 main event fights here on other promotions. You know, like Tom Breeze looked incredible against Clayton Silva. You know, super calm and relaxed, found his way into range and took the back. As you said, Brett Johns, you know, he seems to go from strength to strength, that guy. And if he keeps getting the right opportunities, I think we're going to see we've got a superstar in the making there for sure. Honestly, I think the highlight for me was the Wesley Meyer Lewis McGrillen fight. It was a really good scrap. You know, Wesley Meyer came out with a good game plan. He was fighting very smart, which is good to see. And McGrillen, you know, he was able to rally in that last round and pull that back. But it was a good lesson for him. And I can see those guys crossing paths again in the future.
What was it like for you to see sort of all your hard work come to fruition in this event, and especially following on from Veronica's win, you know, not long before that? I mean, it's been kind of, in a lot of ways, must be one of the craziest, most memorable periods of your life right now, right?
Yeah. Veronica and I were just talking about it earlier, to be honest, because you know, our first year wedding anniversary is coming up in a couple of weeks, and we just look back at what we've done this year. You know, she's come back from 3 years off. She's got 2 wins under her belt against, you know, 2 tough opponents that were the favourites going into the fight. Of course, PFL Europe's gone, you know, incredibly well. We couldn't be happier with the events that we've put on and the kind of the mark we've made in Europe, but it's nothing compared to where we're going. And then, you know, bigger picture, PFL globally, you know, we've got different leagues setting up around the world. We've got the pay-per-view bracket launching. We've got, we acquired Bellator, which opens up a lot of other options. And the conversations I'm having 2024 might be able to top this one, but it's going to be difficult to do because this has been a pretty special year.
I was going to say, like, Bellator's always had like a really strong presence and market in Europe, right? I imagine you would have just been over the moon when arguably the worst kept secret in MMA became official. But how do you think that sort of plays into things? And also you must have some pretty big fantasy matchups and thought about like a lot of crossover fights. I know like Cyborg you were kind of going back and forth on Twitter, you know, let's maybe make that fight happen. What are some of the biggest fantasy matchups that you've had on your radar for a while?
Man, you know, the Bellator roster is stacked. Some of my favorite fighters are on that roster, including the likes of Mousasi and Mads Burnell. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, of course, you know, the PFL the guys have been teasing the champion versus champion events, but you know, there are so many fighters up and down that roster that are maybe not champions, but maybe top 10 that would be really interesting matchups for some of our top ranked fighters. And then, you know, other guys that were signed to Bellator that maybe didn't get the activity that they wanted, you know, further down the rankings early in their career, they might have the opportunity now to cross over to PFL and to fit into one of either the regional leagues or the global roster, and opens up more opportunities, more activity for them. There's so many interesting fights that I would like to make. I'm not going to tease anything right now, but as I was sitting cage side on Friday night, I was matchmaking for 2024 in my head. I've got a whole list of fights that I would like to see, and I think we can have a lot of PFL versus Bellator super fights between guys that are highly ranked in both organizations and potentially on their way to a belt. But there are so many different plans going on at the moment, growing in different directions that honestly, who knows what the future holds. I'm just kind of looking towards it with excitement.
This is a big win, by the way, for fighters all around the world who are looking for a place to fight. And by the way, I don't know if you saw, Dana White had a few harsh comments on the future of PFL and Bellator, but how do you think both of these companies coming together affect the landscape of MMA?
What it does is it brings two big rosters together. Bellator have got some great fighters, and you can argue that some of the guys in Bellator are the best in the world in that weight class. Unfortunately, of course, we're not going to get to see a lot of those crossover fights with UFC champions, but with Bellator and PFL champions coming together, I think it creates more interest for the fans and creates more conversation around where the best fighters in the world are. If you look at Fight Metric, we've got, I think, 25% of the top ranked fighters in the world now across the two rosters. So we're really in a strong position to keep growing. But of course, the UFC had a massive head start on everybody. They've done amazing things for the sport, and I'll always appreciate and respect what they've done, what Dana's done for the sport of mixed martial arts, and the opportunities that were given to me. But ultimately, mixed martial arts needs to continue moving forward, and I think the pure sport format of PFL really appeals to a lot more fans, especially given the fact that the UFC's started to gravitate more towards the entertainment industry, and the sporting fans out there that like a good contest between two high level fighters that are in a system where they know what they have to do to achieve the championship and the big money. It just makes it easier to follow for newer fans. And then, with the regions opening up around the world, we're going to have lots of regional champions that can then move into a global championship. So we're going to be scouring the globe for fresh talent, and it's not going to be long before the majority of the best fighters around have got two or good options of where they want to go. And then it's up to them to make the choice. But the choice is the important thing for the fighters. Having the option is really the biggest value to the sport that the PFL brings.
Yeah, exactly right, man. And I'm sure that means great things for people here in Australia and New Zealand. But I was going to say that, not everybody's a UFC fighter. Like, look at Mike Perry, him and Bare Knuckle FC. That is a great fit for him. Not everybody sort of fits the UFC mold, and not everybody fits that structure there. So it's great to have options for people. Just quickly, before we move on to UFC 296, I saw MVP was in the ring, in the octagon, in the cage, in the smart cage over the weekend. What is the status with MVP? Because I guess a lot of people thought this guy was 100% going to the UFC, but now there's questions. People are going, maybe the UFC kind of fumbled the bag here.
I can't give too much away. I was actually chatting with MVP this morning at the hotel before heading to the airport. I'm not going to say too much, but of course I'm a big fan of MVP. No matter where he goes, they're going to be great fights. But the idea of him facing Cedric is really mouth-watering. There are very few fighters that are going to be able to step in from a mixed martial arts perspective to be able to challenge someone like Cedric. But then Cedric, only 5-0 in his career, he's already looking at the biggest fights he can get. MVP makes a lot of sense. I know Anthony Pettis has been gunning for the fight. I would love to see that. I just think there's lots of interesting things that we can do. And the other thing with MVP as well is we know he likes boxing. We know he would love to continue his boxing career alongside his MMA career. And that's an option that would be on the table for him if he did sign with the PFL. So, there are other things that are, able to sway fighters' decisions, not only better purses and, and more fighter first activity within the PFL, but the opportunities to have more command over their own career. And I think, someone like MVP is a, he knows himself, he knows his brand, he knows what his worth is. And, he's going to make the right decision for him.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to see what happens there. By the way, one of my most favorite stare downs over the weekend, unlike that Conor McGregor, Petr Yan stare down, did you guys see that in Russia, which made absolutely no sense. And then some other crazy stuff happening. That, just to make it clear, that was my favorite stair dancing MVP in that cage, in that smart cage, and potentially having that fight.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you can just kind of play it out in your head so many different ways. There are a few fighters that could deal with the striking style of MVP, but you've got to think Cedric Doumbé is going to be one of the favorites on the planet to be able to figure him out as a puzzle. I would certainly love to see it, and to be sat cage side for it would be electric.
100%, man. Well, congratulations. Like, a massive weekend. I imagine that the feeling and the nerves are so different compared to, say, before, like, going out and fighting or cornering someone, as opposed to like seeing, your hard work of like weeks and months coming to fruition. So you guys did a phenomenal job. Want to talk to you about UFC 296 and get your thoughts on these fights, because there's obviously some big ones here, especially in terms of the welterweight division, man. Very much a premiere of that division. But dude, like, before we even talk about like Colby and Leon, one massive storyline that has kind of almost overshadowed everything, and that's obviously Ian Machado Gary's kind of like personal life, and the dynamic of everything in his personal life, people talking about his marriage and stuff like that. It's really just taken a life on its own, and it's like even the MMA community's got dissecting it. Sean Strickland's giving his 2 cents. You've got former training partners talking about things. People are dissecting, older interviews about, the things he said about Neil Magny and Jeff Neal and stuff like that. I wonder, like, what do you think of, all of this heading into such a massive fight for him as he takes on Vicente Luque, and kind of the shift that, I guess Ian has had with like the public perception and the MMA community in general?
Yeah, it's been interesting to kind of follow it, to be honest, and watch the story kind of coming out and people learning different facts and different circumstances that Ian Garry may have found himself in. Honestly, I feel bad for the kid. He's a good fighter, and that's been overshadowed by all of the drama in and around his personal life. I mean, any interaction I've had with him was always good. I saw him several times at Cage Warriors. I called a couple of his fights. He's a very skilled and talented fighter. He had great coaches back in the day that really instilled a good skill set into him. But there was a point in his career where, things started to go south, and they went south very quickly from what I can tell from people around him that I've spoken to. And it just seems like his life was being guided by other people, which is a real shame, because, for a young man with so much potential, I feel like his potential is being undermined by the drama that's being created around him. I don't think he's a mean person necessarily. I don't think he's I don't think he's vindictive in any way. I think some of the things that he says are not very well thought out. Some of the things that he does are potentially put in his mind or on his shirt by other people, you could say. So I feel sorry for him, and I feel like his potential is being stifled because of this unnecessary drama around him, of other people trying to steal the limelight, or even just kind of create a limelight for themselves. I feel like it's a lot of weight going into this weekend's fight against Vicente Luque, who, as we know, is a very, very tough and skilled individual. But honestly, an even playing field with Ian Garry coming in with a clear mindset and a good focus and a good training camp, because we have to also question how his preparation's been if he's not been welcome into a lot of gyms. I still would give Ian Garry the advantage, because I feel like he's a bit younger and slicker. He's a bit more relaxed and more confident. Vicente Luque can be a little bit hard-headed sometimes in his style. So I don't know. I kind of feel like all this drama balances it out a little bit, makes it more of a 50-50 fight, because Ian Garry is going to be distracted by, the press conference, which is going to be a pay-per-view event in itself.
Here we go. Yeah.
Oh, that's exactly what I was going to ask you about, right? Because it's one thing to sort of deal with this in your own personal life and your own personal time, but like the press conference is going to be absolutely bananas. Colby Covington's not going to hold back. You've got Leon, who, if he chooses, he can, share stories depending on what he's asked. I think that's going to be obviously not tougher than the fight itself, but it's going to be a very tough thing to go through so close to the fight. If you're Ian, how do you even handle and navigate something like that, right? You're kind of there completely open. How do you handle something like that? And what are you going to be looking for just to gauge like how he's handling the situation ahead of the fight?
I think he needs to be very, very cautious about how he approaches this press conference, because he has the potential to turn everybody on the stage against him. Of course, you've got Colby there, who's going to get stuck in straight away. I don't think Leon will. For me, Leon's too classy for that. If someone comes and starts throwing dirt his direction, then Leon, of course, will stand his ground. But he's a very polite, quietly spoken individual who does his work in the cage. So I don't think we're going to get a great deal of drama from Leon unless Ian Garry attacks him. Same thing with Paddy Pimblett. He would have something to say, but he won't say anything unless you go at him first. So Ian Garry needs to choose his battles. And this is again where, the political spin that's probably being kind of weaved into his mind before he steps onto the stage is going to determine whether he's got control of the situation or not. I mean, we heard the story about the elevator and him being encouraged to start a fight with Chimaev. Of course, that wasn't the right thing to do, and he made the call for himself there. And I'm glad he did, because it would have been a bad thing to do for everybody involved. But it's the same situation, like you read the messages that were sent to Sean Strickland, and I don't know about you guys, but I didn't read them in Ian Garry's voice. I don't know how much he speaks for himself at the moment. Even when he's sitting on stage with the mic in his own hand, I still feel like a lot of the words are being put in his head. So I hope, what I would like to see is him sit on the stage and be himself and speak from the heart and tell people where he's at and what's actually going on. But I don't know if we'll get that just yet.
You'd imagine Colby Covington will be putting in a bit of a performance on this press conference as well, Dan. I mean that's all that Colby Covington does, isn't it? He is a performer now, and this is where the UFC moving towards entertainment. It is quite obvious with the likes of Colby Covington, who obviously embraces the pro wrestling aspect of promotion, and he's very good at it. A lot of people like that style of promoting, but one thing that you can be sure of with Colby Covington is he's going to say whatever's necessary to create the sound bites for all of the media out there. And Ian Garry is the easiest target sitting on the stage. So I would imagine Colby Covington's going to be rubbing his hands together and writing his scripts to keep in his inside pocket ready for that day.
Oh, dude, 100%. I can't wait for this press conference. The UFC at this point could basically start selling tickets to the press conference and make the gate just off, how insane it's going to be. Speaking of selling tickets around here that we're selling are tickets to the Smooth Sack Seminar. Just kidding. There's no tickets. Just you and a date with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0, so you can have the smoothest sack in town, even smoother than Santa's sack. And it also makes for the perfect gift for either yourself or anybody in your life, making Christmas shopping nice and easy. You've got the phenomenal Lawnmower 5.0 featuring the 2 next generation blade heads, a standard trimmer blade for taking a little bit off the top under your boys, and then a new foil blade for that ultra smooth finish wherever your heart desires. When you get that ultra smooth shave under your neck, well, you can do the same thing for your balls this time. Nothing can stop you. And the Performance Package 5.0, it also comes with the Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear hair trimmer, featuring the proprietary advanced skin-safe technology to protect your delicate presence from nicks, cuts, snags, anything like that. They're both waterproof, so there's no issue smashing it out in the shower. It also comes with the Crop Soother Aftershave Lotion and the Crop Preserver Anti-Chafe Ball Deodorant. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back to anything else. And then the gift that keeps on giving, you've also got 2 free gifts: Manscaped's Boxers 2.0 Premium Underwear and the Shed 2.0 Toiletry Bag. Everything to make you the best version of yourself this Christmas, next year, and a perfect gift for yourself or anyone in the world or in your life. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. And just opening it up as an experience in itself, go to Manscaped right now, use the code word submission, get 20% off and free shipping now.
There you go. And of course, UFC 296 Fight Week. UFC 296 this coming weekend. You're probably wondering, all right, where am I going to watch it? Am I splashing out for the pay-per-view? Or am I going to go to the pub or some kind of venue with the missus or the mates and have a few cheeky pints, maybe have a pub meal, watch it for free? Well, our good friends at Fanzo have you covered with the #1 venue finder in the world. It's free and it's here, and all you got to do is download it. You whip out the app. I've got it right here. You click on the fixture of choice, which in this case is obviously UFC 296, and it shows all the pubs or venues nearby showing the event. Let's go to the Riviera Hotel. I haven't seen what this offers before, so let's see. 4.2 rating. There's some photos, 10 screens, commentary, serves food, Wi-Fi guide, and an outdoor screen. Fantastic. Ticks the boxes for me. If we were to click on, say, the Sporting Globe instead, you've got 50 screens, commentary, serves food, garden projector, and outdoor screen. So you got more screens, but you don't have the Wi-Fi. So the choice is yours. You can make an informed decision. Fans are the #1 venue finder in the world. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. You and me have been in 100 situations where we rock up to the pub to watch the fights. We haven't booked anything because, that's us. And it's basically packed out. You can't even find a spot in the place. Fanzo is perfect because it tells you all the other pubs in the area that are watching it, that are showing the fights. And it's especially important to me whenever I'm doing some kind of family errand and I'm like, oh, crap, the fights. I need to see them right now. Perfect to tell you exactly what's happening in your area. Make sure to download Fanzo today and click the link in our description right now to start searching for the perfect venue for UFC 296. It's going to be a banger. But Dan, just getting back to this card, we got Wonderboy versus Shavkat. Stephen Thompson is basically looking at this as his punching ticket to the next title shot. You have to give the guy respect for basically putting up his hand to fight one of the toughest challengers in the division after everything that he's been through, and the fact that he's 40 years old. Someone in his position can say, hey, I'm just going to be fighting some of these other guys in the division, make my money, and then sort of retire. But he wants the best of the best to make it to a title shot. Shavkat, this is a big chance for him to get a massive win over someone with huge name value, also one of the best strikers at 170, and somebody who people haven't really had too much of an opportunity to really sort of stop and make look bad. Obviously, he's been grappled before, held down before, but not that many people, Pettis caught him, but not that many people can say they've really put Wonderboy away. Got to ask, how do you see this fight sort of playing out between the two? Obviously, Shavkat is an absolute machine. Wonderboy, an unbelievable striker, but we know his deficiencies in the grappling area have come to life in the octagon before. Do you think Shavkat just plays it smart here? Does he just move in, try to take him down and win via that way? Or do you believe he believes he's the man to stand up with Wonderboy and do it whatever way he wants to make a statement, UFC 296?
Of course, everyone's expecting big things from Shavkat, but it is worth noting that these kind of fights are the best for Wonderboy Thompson and his skill set. You talk about the times when he's been caught. It was when he was pressuring Tyron Woodley and when he was pressuring Pettis. He doesn't do very well moving forward and putting it on his opponent. So that's going to be something he won't have to worry about here. Shavkat's going to come and pressure him, and he's going to be very kind of square and upright as he's doing it, which for someone like Wonderboy with the kicking style that he has and with his ability to pull people onto shots, this might be his opportunity to really show his striking skills to the fullest effect. The thing is with Shavkat, he's able to close people down so fast. He's very oppressive and overbearing in the way that he fights, and that's where Wonderboy could struggle. But I still think he would prefer someone that comes to get a hold of him rather than someone that stands with their back up against the fence waiting to counter. That's where Wonderboy really struggles for me. So I don't know. Respect to him for taking this fight, but at the same time, I can't count him out. I know a lot of people will be looking at Shavkat as like, well, he's most likely going to roll through Wonderboy and keep moving his way towards the top, 40-year-old Wonderboy, etc., etc. But, Wonderboy is a smart, intellectual individual with a really high fight IQ. And he must have been watching Shavkat since the beginning of his career, and he's seeing the holes in his game and where he's developed and where he potentially hasn't. If someone's going to catch him with something, it's going to be a person like Wonderboy. So I can't count him out, but I do feel like, he knows his time is running out, whereas Shavkat, even if he loses this fight, he's not going anywhere. He's going to be around for a while. More pressure on Wonderboy in that sense because Father Time's chasing after him, but so will Shavkat, which might make it easier to catch him with a knockout shot.
Where does Wonderboy sit for you? Because this is a guy that's been in the UFC for over a decade. He's consistently fought the best of the best back to back for a really long period of time. He stood up against the UFC when his opponent didn't make weight. He sort of made a statement and said, look, I'm not going to fight. This isn't right. And here he is at the age of 40 putting up his hand to fight Shavkat. His style is a super rare style that basically nobody could really make work except for him. We haven't seen too many others sort of being able to implement it. Where does he sit for you when it comes to the guys that have done it before?
He's one of my favorites to watch, especially, in the early days when people were still unsure of his style. Some of the things that he would come out with, that lovely right hand to right high kick that kind of sweeps around and slaps you in the back of the head. He's got a very, very cool style that not many people can pull off in mixed martial arts. the question is, has that style evolved enough to be able to deal with the current stage of mixed martial arts? And because Wonderboy does his best work in a very bladed side-on stance, if he does get pressured, it takes away a lot of his attacking ability. He has to really manage, create space, to land his shots. But I feel like he brings a diversity to mixed martial arts that I think he's slowly kind of being filtered out, if you like. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We're seeing fighters with a more streamlined game plan now. They're learning the necessary skills instead of all of the periphery skills that Wonderboy and guys like myself picked up along the way. Studying Taekwondo for 17 years. I would say there's probably 95% of the kicks that I learned that I never threw in a mixed martial arts fight. So he's a little bit of a throwback in that sense, but I like the fact that he's almost a bastion for traditional martial arts in current mixed martial arts. So I've got to respect him for that. And I still think there are a lot of things in his game that can be very effective that are maybe, I don't want to say being lost along the wayside, because smart fighters like Sean O'Malley are starting to see these things and pick them up as well. Corey Sandhagen as well, someone that takes more traditional styles of kicking and moves them into mixed martial arts. But you've got to give Wonderboy respect for his staying power and just the person that he is. Everybody talks about how much of a gentleman he is, how classy he is. And you've got to think that no matter whether he's competing or just being an ambassador for mixed martial arts, he's always going to have a very, very positive influence on the people around him.
100%, man. I think not enough gets talked about what an incredible person he is, but also like even career wise, like there is a path for him to fight for the belt and even win the belt if stars really aligned for him. Like you mentioned, like there's a path to victory here against Shavkat, and then if Leon were to defend the belt, like I think stylistically that's a pretty fascinating matchup and one that probably suits him better than say a heavy wrestler like maybe a Colby or even a Kamaru Usman. So it's a fascinating time in the division and especially this card. I want to sidestep a little bit as well though and ask you, like, where do you stand on Paddy Pimblett versus Tony Ferguson as a matchup? It's definitely one of those ones where it feels like the old is being fed to the young, so to speak. But it's not. In saying that, it's not like it's a clear-cut win for Paddy, in fact, at all. Because you've got Ferguson who, he's had a rough skid, but like the KO power is undeniably there. He's still good with his hands. He still looked good up until the moments where he's been stopped. He's got the ground game that, I'm wondering if you think he can stave off Paddy Pimblett. It's actually a really tough matchup for Paddy. This is by no means like, we'll just, feed him somebody so we can keep building his profile. How do you see this one playing out? And if it does stay on the feet, what do you think Paddy's route to victory even is?
I think we're going to see an evolved striking skill set from Paddy in this one. I think he's going to respect the ground game of Tony Ferguson as well as, the toughness. But ultimately, he has lost a step. He's not as fast as he used to be, and he can't take a shot the way that he used to be able to. And I feel like although Paddy, his striking can look quite reckless, I know it's something that he's working hard on because that's the area that people are going to want to challenge him. I think he's going to be confident that he's going to be faster than Tony and be able to land shots and take them better than Tony. But I also feel like, and I think Paddy's highlighted this in his own comments. I think Tony's misinvested his energies in this training camp. Like he didn't need cardio or heart. That's the one thing that, like if one thing is going to stay with Tony Ferguson, it is those two things. He's losing his ability to react. He's losing his ability to move at speed. These are the things that he's going to struggle with in the fight. And he's not done anything from what we've seen training with David Goggins to bolster these things. He's not doing any kind of smart plyometric training. He's not doing any reactionary drills from what I can tell. He's certainly not working on any really, simple technical basics, which is really what he needs. He would have been better working with someone like Freddie Roach. Someone that's going to make him sit down on his punches and move one foot after the next and, maybe be a little bit less chaotic, but more fundamentally sound. Because, if I'm an older guy fighting someone like Paddy, I'm expecting speed and I'm expecting a fluidity from striking to grappling that might catch Tony Ferguson off guard because he's not the fighter that he was. Of course, his losses are at a high level and Paddy isn't at that high level just yet, but even so, and you've got to think that Paddy's evolution right now is going to be much, much quicker than anything that Tony Ferguson's going to be working on. I have a concern that he's probably ran himself into the ground in this training camp, and we'll be looking back on this in hindsight. Will it be a 6th loss in a row? I think we'll be looking back on this in hindsight, and he'll be thinking to himself, I should have worked on my basics instead of driving myself into the ground on a treadmill.
Dude, that's a brilliant point about overtraining. You're 100% right, especially like with Goggins, someone who's going to push you to your limits. And you're right, like, a little bit older. There's always been like a certain defiance to Tony Ferguson's entire style, but this might be the key moment where it's like, all right, like you said, let's just go back to basics. And it's hard because he's never really had a proper team. He's kind of always made his own team, and to be this late in the career and really seeing and figuring out what works and almost starting from scratch. It's a very, very tough position to be in. Just quickly, before we talk about the main event, obviously we've got Pantoja and Royval. They're doing it again. Pantoja's almost like on the rematch circuit at the moment, just going again with everybody. And he already choked out Royval a couple of years ago. I wonder, what do you think Royval needs to do to sort of, make things different this time?
I think he needs to. I think he needs to choose his moments in this fight, because he can be quite chaotic in his style, which works for him. Kind of similar to the way that it used to work for Tony Ferguson. You throw so much at somebody in one stream that eventually something gets through, and that's what's so fun about Royval's style, is that he is very fluid in his attack, and he does have a lot of different options, different directions he can take it. But you can say the same thing about Pantoja. And I always, if you've got two fighters that are quite chaotic in their style, I always lean towards the one that's got more experience, purely because they've been doing it for longer, right? It takes a very quick reaction to fight the way that both of these guys do, and wisdom plays into that quite a lot. So the experience on Pantoja's side, the fights that he's had, the wins that he's had, and the fact that he is doing rematches right now, it means he knows what he's working with. He knows what he needs to do to win these fights, and Pantoja is one of my favorites. There's a real intensity to him, but also a calmness that comes with that, because he knows that when it's time to attack, he's got all the skills that he needs to put his opponents away. So the smart thing for Pantoja to do is to allow Royval to kind of express himself and then punish him for it. That's where Royval needs to kind of pick his moments and see if he can draw Pantoja out, use his footwork to make him miss a little bit, and then capitalize if he comes forward swinging.
And let's talk about the big one, man. Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Obviously, Leon's really kind of come into his own. He's got a ton of momentum, self-belief after the 2 Usman wins. Colby Covington, he's stepping up here, but obviously we know he's lost to Usman twice. What do you think he has to do differently in order to get the win here this coming weekend?
He's got to start at a good pace and maintain that pace all the way through. One thing that works really well for Colby Covington is the fact that he is able to kind of outrun his opponents most of the time moving forward. His ability to stifle people and to constantly make them reactive to his attack is really what wins the majority of his fights. It's a tenacious pace. And if he can put Leon on the back foot early, he might be able to start stealing rounds away, and it might be championship rounds before Leon knows it. And he's spent 3 rounds defending takedowns. It might not be the most beautiful performance from Colby, and it might not be the most effective at doing damage, but he might be able to steal the rounds purely by being the one that's making the decisions first. That's the real danger for Leon. His takedown defense is incredible. His ability to wrestle and create space is really second to none in the division. Honestly, I just feel sometimes like he waits for the perfect opportunity, and that's why his fights can go long sometimes, because he's waiting for an opportunity that sometimes he needs to create. But then, having said that, I almost feel like we're going to get a similar type of situation with Leon that we did with Usman, where he was a little bit kind of holding back up until his title reign, and then he starts putting people away. We saw the same thing with Usman, didn't we? He went over to Trevor Whitman, started working on nice, clean basics, and started putting people on the canvas. And with the confidence now that Leon's got from his last couple of wins, and from the fact that he is the champion, I feel like he's going to start to open up his game. So really, it's about staying out in the open and creating space and forcing Colby Covington to walk onto things, because he's going to come forward, and he can be susceptible to things because he is a a front foot fighter. He likes to be in his opponent's face. So similar to what we were talking about with Wonderboy and Shavkat, Leon's got someone that's going to come to him for the fight. He's not going to have to go looking for it like he did against Cowboy. And that might suit him better as well.
I know a lot of people point to like MMA maths and sort of like, well, Colby lost to Usman twice, Leon beat Usman twice, so that's a massive thing in his advantage. But do you feel like this is one of the times where it kind of goes a little bit out the window? I say this because there were moments when Usman really pressured Leon that it seemed he was getting the better of him just in those moments, and people felt like, man, if he did more of that, he would have had more success in those fights. But the thing with Usman is, by all accounts, it seems like his knees aren't really as good as they used to be, which is maybe why he lent more towards the striking as opposed to the wrestling. But with Colby, as far as we know, we don't have those problems. You know what I mean? He's going to be going there. And I wonder if he is relentless and if he is, taking away that space, do you think Leon can defend takedowns, for 25 minutes? And if he has to sort of, switch things up from those moments in the Usman fight where Usman had success, do you think he can do that?
I certainly think he can, but the danger is that, he can spend 25 minutes defending takedowns, but that still probably means that Colby wins the fight by decision. Because if Leon's being defensive the whole time, then Colby's winning purely based on control and aggression. And that's the danger. It's not only defending the takedown for Leon, it's also finding the time to score your own points and land your own shots. And this might be a much closer range fight for Leon. Like knees to the midsection might be a big key for him. Elbows, you remember what he landed against Gunnar Nelson?
Yeah.
Send him off with that elbow. Those kind of skills are going to be really useful against Covington. But it's about mobility, isn't it? It's about footwork, lateral movement. Can't get trapped up against the fence and be defending double legs and single legs all night because, Colby can run the clock out and we know he's got the conditioning for it. Like this is where you're right. MMA maths doesn't work because stylistically fighters can be far more different than they can in any other combat sport because there's so many more things on the table. Like if you look at this fight from Colby's perspective, this is a different test to a Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman, who can wrestle and who is big and physically strong. Colby Covington's not the same size as a lot of these welterweights, but he is able to put a different kind of pace on them. But he's also got to look at Leon and think to himself, well, where is the danger here? And it's not close range, like it is with Usman, right? Usman can counter wrestle and he can reverse takedowns and very physically strong on the inside. I feel like Colby's going to feel a lot safer if he gets close to Leon here. And he can also potentially be able to put Leon on the back foot, like I said, and burn the clock out and win the rounds that way.
And imagine if, Colby does get him down, let's say in the first round and gets the confidence and then Leon starts sort of second guessing himself in the fight early. Could be an interesting sort of situation there. I got to ask, man, like it sounds like you're seeing both ways of victory for Leon and Colby, but who do you think is going to do it if you had to give the official Dan Hardy stamp of prediction?
I think Leon's going to do it. I think he'll defend his belt, and it wouldn't surprise me if he loses the first two rounds, right? If he spends the first two rounds hand fighting, clinch fighting, trying to get himself off the fence, and then eventually he's going to start to land those short elbows and knees, which will start to slow Colby down, make him a little hesitant to close range because now he's getting a bit more fatigued. He's more open to these shots, and now the knees are starting to take effect to the body. Then, of course, his conditioning is being affected by that as well. And then if he starts to hang out on the outside, that's where Leon's a much more dangerous fighter than Usman, because for as quick and as powerful as Usman is with his basics, there's more depth to the striking game of Leon, and Colby would be far more susceptible to the strikes of Leon, after he spent 10 or 15 minutes wrestling and potentially started to fail and take a few shots to the head and body, leaning towards Leon.
Do you think Belal finally gets his long overdue title shot next, or do you think somebody at UFC 296 kind of, maybe steals that spot? You got Wonderboy, Shavkat, you got Ian Gary, you got Vicente Luque. There's a lot of options at the moment. Almost too many options at welterweight currently.
Yeah, it's a tough time for Belal. He's just not. There's just a couple of guys in the welterweight division, especially with the drama around Ian Gary. If he comes off a win, there's going to be interest around him. People will be clicking on those videos, and we know that can determine what the UFC rankings are going to look like at the end of the week. Same thing with Shavkat. If he comes off a big win over Wonderboy, he could potentially be positioned in a place where he can pick up another win and find himself into a title shot. And without wanting to go too much into it, I feel like the political situation right now is going to work against Bilal Muhammad. I think they're going to, he's not going to get the spotlight that he would deserve for his skills because of other things that are happening in the world. And I'm being cautious and sensitive given the current climate, but that is something I am keeping in mind that is potentially going to work against him. He won't get the opportunities to have a microphone in front of him or a camera in front of him like he would normally.
And obviously Colby wants Islam. Islam wants to move up. Leon wants to go to middleweight. It's like the days of our lives, but in MMA, you never know what's going to happen. One thing we do for sure know is that how proud we are of you, man. You did such a great job. Congratulations with PFL. Congratulations to Veronica. Congratulations to all your success and happy upcoming wedding anniversary, guys. Make sure to follow Dan Hardy at Dan Hardy MMA for all of the best breakdowns in the game. If you don't have his book, Part Reptile, what are you doing? Perfect Christmas present for all your friends here, Australia, New Zealand, worldwide, and of course the War Room. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your super busy schedule. It's always an honor for us to have you on the show. Thank you so much for supporting us and being with us for the entire year. You're one of our favorite people to speak to, and it means a lot to have you here on the program. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, anytime, guys. You guys do fantastic work. You play an integral role in the world of mixed martial arts, and I'm a big fan of the show, and I know a lot of other people are as well. So keep up the work that you're doing, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And best wishes for 2024.
Now I know you're tired, Dan. Just go get some sleep, man. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, man. Enjoy your well-earned rest. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, guys.